Let me start off by welcoming everyone to the first virtual class for CYB 380. And so CIB 380 is network scripting, and it's going to be on Tuesdays and Thursday nights from 5:30 till around 10:30 is what it's slated for, but we'll talk about that in just a few minutes. Let me start off by introducing myself. There are several people who I do notice, so I think I've had you in class before. Uh, So I'm going to go through the same spiel that I normally go through on the first day. So let me start off again. My name is Sam McLean. I've been here at ECPI for quite a while. I took a little bit of time off during the holidays for, you know, just spend time with family and friends. So I'm back at it for this year, and I really enjoyed this course. Let me start off by talking a little bit about the courses I've taught. Here at ECPI, we've just gone through a restructuring or started a restructuring of our courses, and we're revamping a lot of them. And this is one of those that has gotten some revamping over the last several years. I've taught this course previously. I've taught it for quite a while. This course is labeled network scripting, but it's really talking more around automation and how we get our environments set up and configured correctly. It talks about how we can set an environment up from the very beginning, and then how we can configure it to maintain its state. And it's really considered network scripting because it really works through the network. So everything we do is from one host machine to other machines. And so we're going to touch three different types of environments. One is going to be a Fedora environment, one is going to be an Ubuntu environment, and the third is going to be a Windows server or Windows Server environment. So we're going to touch all three, and you're going to see how network scripting, whether through Shell or Python or PowerShell or Ansible, and we'll talk about that, kind of works together to give you a nice cohesive CI/CD pipeline or continuous integration or delivery. So for me here at ECPI, I've taught a lot of different courses. I've taught everything from introduction to logic and design, all the way up to Exchange or Microsoft Exchange creation, implementation, and configuration. I haven't just taught on the Windows side. I also am a DevOps manager or DevOps engineer at my current position here in Columbia, South Carolina. And we have around 5 hosted clients that we administer on a daily basis, along with about 30 to 40 on-premises clients that we service as well. I'm a utility billing, I'm in the utility and billing space. So if you live in the Columbia area and you've received a bill for water from Richland or from the city of Columbia, chances are that was produced using our system. If you live in the Virginia Beach area, if you have city of Virginia Beach water, chances are we were also the ones that may have produced that bill as well. So we have a lot of different clients, not just in the US, we also have several in Canada and 2 or 3 in the Caribbean that we service as well. The company I work for is called Hanson Technologies. It's a Australian-based company, but the business unit I work for is based here in Columbia, South Carolina. So like I mentioned earlier, kind of going back, I taught a lot of different courses. I do enjoy teaching a lot of the CI/CD courses, the network scripting, the database, the Linux administration courses. So these are a lot of fun for me to go through and talk about and to walk through, because this is kind of what I do on a daily basis. And it makes it so much easier when I can walk through it and kind of show you not only what the text and what the course has set up, but also talk a little bit around what the industry is looking like and what the landscape for the industry is going to be in the next 3 to 5 years. So it makes it a whole lot easier and a lot more fun if you get that kind of perspective as well. So let's talk a little bit about this course. So this course is looking at network scripting. And like I mentioned before, we're going to be working through or using Ansible as our tool set. And so I'm going to read through the course objectives and then talk a little bit through the week objectives as well. So the course objectives or overview is the information technology sector is constantly evolving and it's accelerating at a very rapid pace. Things keep changing almost on a yearly basis. So the things that I may tell you today or the things that I may tell you this month may change or have probably started changing as we start to dive through things. But the one thing that hasn't changed is how we deliver source code, how we deliver change sets, how we provision machines. Those things really haven't changed. The mechanisms and the vehicles we use to do those changes are what change underneath us. And that's what we call IT automation. In a broad sense, IT automation is the process and software or set of software that helps with the management of the IT infrastructure, whether it's networking or storage or servers or configurations. It is the glue that kind of puts all that together. It provides us the ability to provision machines or virtual machines or hardware quickly, to create machines from scratch very quickly, and to track any changes that are performed in the infrastructure very rapidly. Now, we're going to talk a little bit more about Ansible in just a few moments, but before we do, I wanted to mention that every session that we have that is a lecture based, if we're doing guided practices or in class activities, those will be recorded and will be uploaded on the main screen or the main homepage of the class. So you'll be able to go back and see those at any point in time. At some point, I will also upload those to YouTube or some other medium so that you can get access to those later on. Because after, I believe, 90 days, the cloud tends to reap the disk space back and it removes those particular instances. I want you to have access to those, so I'm going to upload those so you'll still have access to them. So what are we going to talk through this week? The first thing I wanted to mention is vCastle. vCastle is the tool that we will use as our virtual platform. It's going to simulate a production or test environment that we're going to use. So in the first week, in this week, we're going to look at installing Secure Shell, configuring Ansible, and running our first playbook. So we're going to look at setting SSH up. What do I mean by setting it up? We're going to configure one of our environments. We're going to call that our host environment to work with our other two environments. And what we do not want is our system or our host system to require a username and password to log into all of our other environments. That becomes tedious. You have to manage usernames and passwords across multiple environments. It gets very hard to manage very quickly. And I'll be quite honest with you, the 5 or so clients that I mentioned that I work with on a daily basis that are hosted clients of ours have anywhere from 30 to 60 servers, whether they are virtual or hardware servers that we manage. We also run a Kubernetes cluster where from any given day we may have 10 nodes to 1,000 nodes running. and the node is just another style of virtual machine. So at any given point in time, I don't want to have to remember usernames and passwords. So we're going to set up a way for us to do an SSH connection between our host machine and the other downstream targets. Any questions before we start off? All right. So let's start off with network scripting. As I mentioned before, we're going to start off with our slideshow. We're going to talk a little bit, and then we're going to dive into our guided practices. What I like to do is have our lecture and guided practices kind of mirror each other, so we're doing the same things at the same time, and we're sort of getting into a flow of how you might work on your performance assessment. I like to have all of the guided practices either finished or close to being finished by the end of the first class, the first day. That way, on the second day, which is Thursday for us, we can finish up anything that we need to on Thursday. And if you have issues or questions or anything that's lingering, we can work through those. That is really your time to work on your assessment if you haven't already started it, and to ask any questions, whether it's related to the course or to the curriculum or to ECPI in general, or even the industry in general. It's your time to talk through anything that you would like to talk through. All right, so let's go ahead and get started with network scripting. So the key objectives that we want to talk through. So upon completing this course, you're going to be able to install and configure an IT infrastructure configuration management toolset. It's a lot of big words to say we're going to install Ansible and work through it efficiently. We're going to also, at some point, either this week or in the coming weeks, talk through other tool sets, because I believe you need a well-rounded understanding of not just Ansible, but other tools that are out there. So we'll talk about those as well. You should be able to create and manage hosts and prepare them for IT infrastructure automation. You should be able to run ad hoc automation tasks from the command line. We'll talk about the command line in just a little while. You should also be able to write scripts to consistently automate multiple tasks and apply those to a managed host environment. You should also be able to automate common system admin tasks using that IT configuration toolset. This week, we're going to look at installing, configuring, and testing Ansible. We're going to log into the client system and verify a successful playbook. We're going to talk about and run a playbook, configure an Ansible module, automate a very simple task, and install and configure and test SSH. So what is Ansible? You've heard me say it. What is Ansible? Ansible is a tool that can be used to remotely automate tasks such as provisioning machines, recreating a machine, tracking any changes performed in that infrastructure, configuring multiple servers at one time, because you can do a hybrid approach where it does it at the same time, using an include or a bidirectional method. We're also going to look at performing software installations. Or why do we need IT automation? Why is it important? Why should we learn this? And they take this course from a networking side, from networking two machines together to apply a change. Let's talk about it in terms of fewer IT operations. Why do we need it? Well, if you're able to automate processes, you're able to automate tasks that are usually repeatable in nature, you're going to reduce your overall cost. If we can reduce overall cost in an IT infrastructure or in an IT organization, you are drastically reducing the overhead needed in order to perform said job or to perform said task. With that being said, a lot of people will ask the next question, well, if I automate it, am I automating myself out of a job? The answer to that usually is no. And the reason I say no is if you automated it, that frees you, the developer, or you, the system engineer, up to do other more complex operations. There's a rule of thumb in DevOps or in development operations, or even in development for that matter. If you do a task repeatedly, let's say more than 3 times, look and see if it can be automated. Chances are it can. And if it can, how much time will it save you or someone if it is automated? And what you'll learn or what you'll see as you take a step back and start to evaluate what can and should be automated, you'll learn that you are all of a sudden either plugging into a CI/CD pipeline or you're building one from scratch. And a lot of times we build those pipelines without actually thinking about it. The company I currently work for, before I was the DevOps manager, I was a senior developer or a lead developer. And I worked on conversions and configurations and building parts and features to the product. There was a need for us to deliver source code that we were writing faster. We had a database administrator who lived on the West Coast, and while he would try his best to deliver the source to our QA or our demo environment as fast as he could, he was one person. And that one person was having to do the work of 10 to 12 developers because it was him doing those deployments. So what we did is we sat down with a pen, paper, and a napkin. I'm not kidding, a napkin. And it was at lunch one day, and we devised a way to take source code after it was checked in and deploy that to an environment, just one environment. And we tested that theory, and we continued to test it over a couple of weeks. And that process started to build, and we added one more environment, and then another. And then we added automation around when a developer checks code in, they no longer have to do anything. It packages it and it deploys it to all of the environments that's needed. Before we knew it, we had automated the entire process of deploying source code to not only our individual or our internal developer platforms, but we also built the groundwork for what we currently call ADM, which is Automated Deployment Methodology, which in turn is our deployment mechanism to our on-premises clients. It's a lot of words to say. Automation can increase productivity and reduce overall cost. It also allows us the freedom to do other things. It gives us more availability, and it allows for greater reliability because it's a repeatable task. It's something that we can do over and over and over, or run over and over and over and not worry about it having any issues. It's done the same way over and over. So why is Ansible automation important? Ansible, by its nature, loves the repetitive work that we don't. None of us like to do repetitive tasks. I can't tell you how many times I've thought about automating how to do my timesheets every day. It's painful to sit there and say, I log 30 minutes to this task and 15 to this and 2 hours to this meeting and 1 hour to... That's painful. But it's a task that potentially could be automated. Ansible takes that that whole task set, that portion that we don't like, and it automates it. Ansible is considered a simple automation language, and it's perfect for IT application infrastructure. It's very easy to learn in a way. It's module based. It's self-documenting in a way. What that means is as you write your source code, and we're going to see that a little later on, it doesn't require you to have a high level of knowledge of how a declarative YAML file works in order for you to get up and running. You would just need to know how to start. And that's what we're going to do. So what are some key definitions before we get started? We have a control node, which is any machine with the Ansible toolset installed on it. We have managed nodes. Nodes. A managed node is a network device that we manage using Ansible. It's not going to be installed on those nodes. Again, there's a typo here. I need to fix that. It's not nodes, it's node, or not nodes, it's nodes. A task is a unit of action in Ansible. You'll notice or you'll see that every Ansible file or every playbook, which is a list of tasks, are broken down into single or multiple units. Those units are tasks that can be run in a sequential manner and are repeatable. Now, Ansible uses the declarative manifest or declarative language YAML, which is a data serialization language generally used for writing playbooks. We have hosts. The host is the machines that you manage with Ansible. I said nodes earlier. It's also a host. You're going to hear me call it a host. You're going to hear me call it a target. It really doesn't matter. Those are all interchangeable words. And the inventory is a list of managed nodes contained in a host file. The host file is not to be confused with the etc host file. This is a totally separate host file that manages either the DNS or the domain name record or the IP address of the host that you would like to connect to. Then modules are units of code Ansible executes. Any questions so far? Can everyone still hear me okay?
Yes.
All right. Pop quiz. What is Ansible?
Automation tool.
There you go. Probably should have taken it off the screen before I said that, but
Ah.
all right, so I do want to ask a question before we get into our first section. How many of you have worked with Linux recently? Okay. So we've got about 5, 6, 7 or 8. Okay. Good. What flavor?
I deal with Red Hat on a regular, but I play with quite a few of my preferences actually is Ubuntu and Kali Linux. I have a couple of those.
Okay. You, you must be in cybersecurity.
I am. How'd you guess?
Uh, Ubuntu, of course. I'm joking. I remember when Kali was called Backtrack.
I do
That's
not.
how old I am.
Oh.
Or how long I feel like I've been in the industry. Yeah, so long story short, Kali Linux was originally designed to be a tool set that the government used, but it was originally developed and it was called Backtrack. And it had a tools, it was a large conglomeration of tool sets used for security and penetration testing. What ended up happening is the owners or the consortium that worked on Backtrack sold the source code to the government in order to allow for certain things, right? And when they did, they wanted to use that same tool set, but they couldn't because of the licensing agreement. So they rebranded as Kali. And with that, they introduced far more features than Kali used to have because originally it was built off of the BSD kernel or platform. It's now, I think, using a Debian platform, which is a lot more fluid, a little easier to understand and use. But anyway, I digress in some of that.
So they licensed it to the government, but rebranded it so they kept their own source code. Excuse me, source code.
They kept their own style, yes. They wanted
Oh,
to
stop.
continue to use it, but they didn't want to use it under the same name.
Right.
Yeah, because if you notice, Kali is still free.
Exactly. Open source.
Yep. All right, so let's go ahead, and the first thing it's wanting us to do is to start with our guided practices. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pause for here, and I'm using my hand at the screen, and you all can't see that. I'm sorry. I'm going to pause this portion, which is the slideshow, and I'm going to move over to using vCastle. If you're having issues getting into vCastle, like I mentioned earlier, let me know. I can reset your password. Also, we're going to start looking at the guided practices, and we're going to hopefully get everything set up as we go through the guided practices. I'm not going to read through the book. I'm not going to talk through all of it, but I am going to at least hit some of the high points as we talk or as I talk through the guided practice to kind of give you the practical understanding and experience as we go through the guided practices. Does that make sense?
Yes.
All right, so let me go ahead and stop sharing. And I'm going to pull up vCastle. All right, can everyone still see that?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. So for this week, there are going to be several guided practices that we're going to work through. How many of you got this when you went to the first guided practice? So don't worry about the video that's attached. There's obviously an issue there rebooting or redesigning or changing out the media, so don't worry about that at the moment. What we're going to look at is the guided practice here. As we go through the certain sections, and I'm going to talk through each one of them, if it calls out a screenshot, I'm going to mention that in the class, and I'm going to take a screenshot myself and put that in the chat. That way you kind of see exactly where we are and what we're doing. And you can kind of follow through if you're watching the video and you've got the PDF pulled up, you kind of have a good understanding of where we're at in the guided practice. So the outcome of the first guided practice is we're going to install, test, and configure SSH. Like I mentioned earlier, we're going to use the vCastle pods using vCastle 2 to log into our CentOS and Ubuntu machines. I mentioned Fedora earlier. It's actually CentOS. We're going to look at using a privileged user and doing sudo or sudoing to the account. So the deliverables that you're going to need are going to be highlighted in red. And like I said, I'm going to call those out as we go through. So I'm going to move this off to a different screen so you can see everything I'm doing in vCastle and follow along. The reason I asked earlier about Linux, how many of you have used it, is what we're going to be working on over the next several weeks does require a small amount of understanding of the directory structure and how Linux works. Even some networking in a way. If you don't know much about the networking side, or if you're not as familiar with the directory structure, don't worry about it. Don't hesitate. Ask. Because if you don't ask, somebody else may have the exact same question, and I do not want to gloss over anything that you may need. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. I am going to pause right here, though, and make sure those of you who haven't gotten into vCastle can, and then we'll get started. So I was just looking through the log in chat. A lot of people have used Kali. A lot of people have used Ubuntu. And honestly, Mint is making a big comeback. I didn't know it was making that big of a comeback until here recently. I was talking to a student, and they made a comment that they were working using Mint.
Not familiar with that.
Oh, with Mint?
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that one per se.
So Mint has been around for a very long time. It used to be based on, I have to go back and look to refresh my memory. I believe it was a derivative of Ubuntu at one point. It was broken off from that code base, and it just kept going down a different path. I'd have to go back and look, so don't hold me to that, but I believe it was.
Is that open source as well, or
Yeah.
any? Yeah.
Any So interesting enough, just about every Linux environment, any Linux distribution is open source unless it is a enterprise level. And even some of those are open source. As an example, you can download and use a developer copy of Red Hat Linux. Or if you don't want to, you can use CentOS or Fedora. Both of those are the same code set or same code base, or used to be the same code base. I say used to be because CentOS, I believe 5 years ago, broke off into Open CentOS, which they still take the same RPM package updates that Red Hat takes. They just take them at their own cadence. As where Fedora is still a part of the ecosystem for Red Hat and IBM. It's just their developer arm. All right, so let's go ahead and if you are in there, go ahead and enter your lab. All right, so the first thing I want to mention is our networking diagram. You'll see we have 3 servers and they're connected to the ECPI network. We have a CentOS machine, an Ubuntu machine, and a Windows server. We're going to be using each one of these to do some task. We're going to use a Linux server to do our beginning task, and then we're going to use another Linux server and a Windows server to be our host or our targets. The first thing it wants us to do is log into our Ubuntu machine. So we'll go ahead and click on Ubuntu. And you'll see two users. First one is CIS 321. We'll go ahead and log into that one. So you'll click it. And the password for it is going to be capital PASSWORD1. I'll paste that in chat. Password 1. So we'll go ahead and hit enter to log in. It's going to take it a moment because this would be the first time that we've logged into the system. It's got to set up our profiles and log in. All right, the first thing we're going to do once we're into our environment is we're going to go down here to our Show Applications window. And there's multiple ways you can get to the terminal. The easiest way without it being bookmarked is to go to Show Applications, up to Search, and type in Terminal. If you don't want to continue to do that, you can actually right-click on it and say Add to Favorites. I do recommend doing that because it's what we're going to be using going forward. That way it's automatically in our list. We're now going to log in to root. Usually at this point, I'll give a disclaimer around root and talk a little bit around why you should not be in root any longer than needed. But before I do that, let me ask, what is the root account used for?
Permissions.
I'd say configuring initial directory and security.
You're both right. So let me ask that a different way. You're both right. What is the equivalent to root in a Windows environment?
Administrator.
Correct. Correct. It is administrator. And so the root or the administrator account is the main account. It's the one that can access and can perform any task. It has access to running processes, to network statistics, to disk information, to CPU, to memory. It can do anything under the sun in that particular environment. It's because of that I make the comment, do not be en route any longer than necessary. And if you're a Linux administrator or you've worked in Linux for any length of time, and I noticed that I believe 7 or 8 of you had raised your hands or mentioned that you had been in Linux for a little bit, you know that being in the root account can potentially cause problems if you forget you're in there. That's why a lot of administrators, myself included, will change the TTY setting, this setting here. Or I'm sorry, PS setting, so that if I'm logged in, I know exactly which account I'm in. And it will tell me I should not be doing anything in that account that's not needed. I have developers who will ask me for root account access every now and again. And I always ask them, what do you need it for? Why do you need it? How long do you need it for? And if the answer is because, or I don't know, they probably aren't getting it. They need to have a specific reason because those accounts need to be locked down. Because of that, the password 1 that we have on these machines, if you change the root password, we cannot get it back. We cannot change it back unless you are still in that shell, in that session. If you come out of that session or the machine reboots on you, we can't change it. The only thing we can do is tear that shell, that pod down, and rebuild it. So it's the reason I say that is be careful when you're in that account. I know that was a long way of saying be careful, but I feel it was necessary because it has happened in the past. All right, so let's go ahead and switch user into root. So su root. Going to ask us for the password. This is where we put the password in for root, which is, again, password 1. So now we're in as root. What we're going to do for this assignment is we're going to add the CS or CIS 321 user to the sudoers group. The sudoers group allows that user to gain permissions to do things as a different user or as the root user if needed. So we're going to say sudo add. Actually, you don't need the sudo part. Add user CIS 321 at ECPI scripting local to sudo. All right, and we're going to hit enter. And you should have seen it add that user to the sudoers group. It's at this point we want to take that screenshot. So I'm going to go ahead and take the screenshot. And this is going to be the first entry in your guided practice.
Hey, Professor, I got a quick question.
Yeah, go ahead.
The screenshots, are we putting it in a Word, like on our own Word document, or how are we doing that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, so you do it in a Word document and upload the Word document.
Gotcha.
Yeah, that's a good point. All right, and so the next thing before we move on to our second page is we're going to add a new user. So we're already in as root. So we're going to say add user. Oh, well, let me back up. Before we add our user, it said we added sudo to our group. I want to make sure we did that. So let's say ID. And so we can actually do ID-U CIS 321. And we need to add ECPI scripting local. And that's garbled. So let's see. Groups. There we go. Let me clear that screen. And I'll run the groups for that user. So this particular user, CIS 321, was added to the sudoers group. If we had looked at that beforehand, we would have seen that that wasn't there. So let's go ahead and do add user. And we're going to use our username. I'm going to say S. McLean. Yours is going to be the username you would use to log into the pod or into vCastle. It's going to start by creating a group and a user, assigning the user to a home directory or creating one, and then copying anything from the skeleton directory into the user's home directory. The skeleton directory, if you haven't used it before, is a way to build a template of what a user should look like when it is built. And so you can put things in it like files, folders, SSH keys. You can put anything that you need to have a generic template built for a user account. And when add user is run, that user account inherits those files. So we're going to say our password is going to be password 1 with a capital P. And if you get the bad password because of dictionary, that's fine. That's because it is password, and that is a dictionary word. We're going to leave the full name blank. You can add that if you would like. I'll go ahead and do that so you'll see it. Room number is virtual. You don't have to fill any of this out. Work phone number is blank. Home phone number is 9999. Not going to give any other. And I'll say yes. If it comes back successfully with no error messages, that means it was successful. Once you've done that part, we need to take another screenshot and add that to our document. Do not worry about getting the groups information in your screenshot. That was added information that I added to the guided practice. You don't necessarily need to show that. And so next, once you've gotten that screenshot, we need to take that information that we just created. One, let's see if it's there. And then two, we need to add that user to sudo, to the sudoers group. So I'm going to clear my screen. And I'm going to say cat etc password. And I'm going to grep for my username. And there it is. Also going to do the same thing for groups. And I have only one group, S. McLean. If I add user S. McLean to sudo, which is our next task, and I run the group again, you'll now see that user has been added to sudo. So what did we just do? We created a user. We checked to see if the user was created. We added that user to the sudoers group so they could elevate their privileges as needed. And we checked again to make sure that that change to the group was added. Let's take it a step farther and let's log in as that user. If you did that, if you did su space your username, then you now should be logged in with that user. One thing I want to show you is it kept my current directory. It didn't change me to my user's home directory. In order to do that, in order to get there, there's multiple ways to do that. You can either do cd enter, which will send you to your home directory. That is the coincidental path to home. So it's a coincidental way of getting there. You can even do $home. That'll send you to home as well. You can do cd tilde. Tilde is the understanding of home as well. Or the last one, which is go directly to your home directory. Any of those will work. Notice that when I do that, it immediately adds that tilde to the screen. That's the current directory, current home directory. And so now, being in the home directory, I want to take another screenshot, but I only need to take it from when I did my sudo. I am going to pause here because am I going too fast?
No.
Okay. All right, so the next thing we're going to do, I'm going to clear the screen, and we're going to update our system. Since this is a Debian-based environment, you can run, actually there's two different ways to run it, but I'm going to ask, how would I go about updating my packages in a Debian environment?
Yum.
You lived in Red Hat too long, man. But good guess, good attempt. It's actually APT, aptitude. The older version of that is apt-get. So Debian, there's actually two ways to do it. You can either do a debased package to do a Debian package install, or you can do it aptitude or apt-get. Either one of those would work. So we're going to use apt in order to do the install. We're going to do apt space updates, and we don't want to be prompted for it to ask us to update. So we're going to do a -y. That just implies yes to do an update. We're going to tail that together with apt. Actually, I missed something. Sorry. Sudo apt upgrade -y. I missed the sudo at the beginning. So sudo apt update -y. And then we use the two ampersands to tie those together. So it's update and upgrade. So we're going to run that. Give it our password. And then depending on how long ago these machines have been updated, as to how long this is going to take. So let's see. Not terrible. I have seen this take about 15 minutes. There we go. Now it's taking a little bit. So once this is completed, we're going to install OpenSSH server. The OpenSSH server is going to allow us that connectivity between our Linux environment and or our Ubuntu environment and our CentOS and our Windows environment at a later point in time. Once we install it, we'll have to configure our sysvinit or systemd command to start up and ensure that we can log in with SSH, which we're going to do right after the installation happens. Any questions so far while we're waiting? So while we're waiting, let's take a 10-minute break, or 10, 15-minute break. When we get back, so 6:37, so around 6:52 or so, when we get back, we'll finish this guided practice up. We'll walk through this one. We'll finish with 1.6 and 1.7, and then we will look at the assessment to show you how that's going to work for the evening. How does that sound?
Sounds good. Also, yeah, no issues so far.
All right, so again, let's take about 15 minutes. I'm going to go on mute and get a glass of water. If you need something, just put it in chat and I'll answer it as soon as I can. There is everyone back. All right, so let's go ahead and continue on. If your instance has already finished its upgrades, the next thing we want to do is run sudo apt install open ssh server.
Maya, give me more. Go. It's with Maya. Your sister has.
And this will do the installation of that server. So that's going to install it along with any dependent modules that are needed. And once that's installed, we will be able to do system ctl status ssh. And if it's running and active, you will see active in your running column. We need to verify our IP address. So we'll do IP addr show to get the IP address. The one that we need to take note of is this IP right here, the 192.168.1.3. That should match what we're going to be working with in just a bit once we do our secondary connection. Anyone not see that IP address?
Not there yet.
Okay, I can pause here for a moment. Daniel, you had a question?
So, yes.
Yes, sir.
So on the next command, the touch, this is a file on the Ubuntu computer.
Mhm.
I did it, but I had a typo when I redid it. I'm trying to see what's the command to delete the wrong one.
RM. So the
Oh.
RM followed by the name of the file.
Gotcha. All right, thank you.
Yep. All right, so let's go ahead and, like Daniel was just doing, let's go ahead and I'm gonna clear the screen. And we're going to make sure we're in our current directory, our home directory. And we're going to do touch. This is a file on the Ubuntu computer. And then we'll do an ls to view that. It's at this point we'll take another screenshot to see that the file was created. All right, so if you are getting, Josh, thank you for mentioning that. If you're getting an issue with running your updates, make sure that there's not a screen hiding behind your terminal that you need to close out of. Because what that's saying is it cannot lock the package that it needs to do its updates with. And let me go ahead and take a look.
Yeah, it's still going away right
Is
now.
it? All right. You mind if I pop in?
Yes, that's fine.
Okay. And I'm sorry, Miss Thornton, you had asked me a few minutes ago or a little bit ago if I could see if you were logged in. I do see you. I'm sorry. I meant to mention that earlier.
No problem. Thank you.
Yep. I got sidetracked when I was talking and didn't get back to it. I do apologize. So what are we?
Yeah, I was up there at the top looking in just to make sure I didn't put in something wrong.
I'm gonna clear that screen. All right, so long story short, it was just trying to capture it, and it was probably still starting up. Let's see if it did. It still did it. Okay. All right, so that's the process that's holding it. So sudo kill-9.
4179, yeah.
There you go.
Much appreciated.
I don't know what it was. It was probably hung in the back end or background. So I don't know exactly what I killed. I probably should have looked at that first. The chances
Yes.
are it was a sudo command for the Ubuntu software section that we didn't see. All
Yeah, I
right.
guess
So
we could input top and see what it was.
well, yeah, you can do it that way, or so I'll go into my Ubuntu machine. You can do that, or if you're in as root, you can do it one of two ways. You can do a PS, aux, or EF, however you do it, and grep for that particular system or that particular ID, parent or PID. So I can say, let's go 4897. You'll see the 4987 that I just did is actually looped back to that user, and it's tied to a sudo command that I did, or a su command that I did. So that you could do it that way. Or if you're a lot more into it than others, you can actually go into proc and you can look for 4987 and you can see what's in there. That's the actual running process in the environment. Which is why I mentioned earlier, being in his root can have its advantages, but it can also be a problem. Because I could essentially wipe that task out or change how it behaves from the command line. All right, so we have our one file. Now we want to view that file. How do we do that from a different machine? So we opened SSH a few minutes ago, or opened SSH server. So let's make sure that it is running. So system CTL. Yes. There we go. So it is running. I want to make sure that it's running. So when we go into our CentOS environment, so I'll go up to our topology and I'll click on our CentOS. The one thing I mentioned earlier was make sure that you see the IP address of the Ubuntu machine because you're going to need that when you get into your CentOS machine. All right, so we'll go ahead and log into our CentOS machine. It should be password 1. And we'll wait a moment for it to start up. And we'll go into activities and we will click on our terminal. All right, so for the terminal, we're going to say SSH, and it's going to be your username at 192.168.1.3. That's the IP address of the Ubuntu machine. You should be asked for a handshake or a fingerprint to ensure that you are who you say you are. What that's doing is putting a known host entry so that it knows who this person or this machine is the next time you go to log in. So we'll say yes. And we're going to say password 1. So now we're in as our Ubuntu machine. Notice it gave us the Ubuntu banner and we see the file. I'm going to take a screenshot of that. So this is actually going to double as 2 screenshots. The first one is to show that you logged into the Ubuntu machine from your CentOS machine. And the second one is to view that file located on the Ubuntu machine. That's actually broken out into 2 sections in the lab, but I added it into one section since it's all in one way to do it. And then we can exit. Any questions so far?
No, just catching up on my end.
Okay, no worries. There are 3 questions at the end of the guided practice. Instead of having to type those in each time, what we're going to do is talk through them. That way you don't have to type them in. All you're doing is your screenshots. The first question is, what is the purpose of SSH or Secure Shell?
The purpose of SSH is to provide a secure and encrypted method for remote access and communication between devices on an untrusted network.
Yep. All right, so why did we install SSH on the Ubuntu machine and not on the CentOS machine?
The SSH on the CentOS machine is I believe is already pre-installed and enabled by default.
Yep. You're right. You're absolutely right. So on the Ubuntu machine, we had to set that particular environment up as a server, and on the because you're actually using that as a server to get into the I'm sorry, using it as a server to broadcast SSH or port 22 in order for the other machines to get into it. By default, like you mentioned, it's not installed, so you have to install it in Ubuntu. In CentOS, it is installed, which is what I just showed there by running SSH. And the last question is, what is the relationship of Ansible to SSH?
SSH is Ansible's main protocol for communication between remote hosts.
Yep. SSH is the main protocol to connect between multiple hosts. You're absolutely right. Any questions on any of that so far?
Do you want us to label our screenshots when we submit them or just have them in a Word document?
Nope, just a Word document's fine. I can pretty much go through and look at the steps to see where you're at.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Now, I'm not going to say if you want to do that, that you can. You can absolutely can do that. It's not required. All right, so that is the first guided practice. That is 1.5. So we have, just to recap, we created a user account on our Ubuntu machine, and we installed OpenSSH server on the Ubuntu machine, and we caught it up with upgrades and updates, along with adding the CIS user and the standard student account with sudo privileges. We created a file in the student account, and then we were able to SSH from the CentOS machine to the Ubuntu machine. So in guided practice 1.6, I'll drag that over. We're going to go a little bit deeper. We're going to look at configuring our CentOS machine to run Ansible. So we're going to add that same user, just like we did in Ubuntu, to CentOS. We're going to grant it the will group, a little different than sudo. We're just going to grant it will, which gives it the same rights and permissions. And then we're going to switch users to that group or to that user account. You'll have to go through the setup process, and then we're going to make sure that Ansible is installed. All right, so I'm going to pull this over to the side. Miss Thornton, you had a question?
Yes, I wanted to get some clarity on what you said about the questions and the assignment. Could you repeat what you said about them?
Yes, so the questions at the end of each guide of practice, you don't necessarily have to type those in. That's just for us to talk through as more of a learning exercise.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. All right, so let's go ahead. I'm going to clear my screen here, and we're going to start with CentOS and 1.6. So we're going to start off in the CIS user or CIS 321 user account. We're going to sudo to root. Again, that password is password1 with a capital P. We're going to add that user that you saw earlier. And it's going to just be user add and then your student ID. Once you add that user, you're going to have to create the password. So as we're in as root, we're going to have to change that password. And so that's just PASSWD followed by the username. Now we're changing that password for the user, and it's password 1. It's going to be okay if you get the bad password section. All that's saying is it's a dictionary password. As root, you still are able to change that. So once we have created the user and changed their password, we're going to add them to the will group. So we'll do user mod -a for append. Capital G is going to be the group. So it's the supplementary groups. And we'll say will followed by the username. And we will, once this is done, we'll go ahead and hit enter. And that will add our group or add our user to the will group. So I can now do cat group followed by grep for my user to see that that user is in the will group. Miss Thornton, you said you were having an issue with your user accounts.
Yes.
All right, make sure you're in the CentOS machine instead of the Ubuntu machine.
Yes, my system says I'm in the CentOS.
So where you're at currently, type exit.
Okay.
Did it change your user prompt?
Where would I see that at? I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. Do you mind if I log in?
No, I don't mind.
Okay. So while I asked if you were in the Ubuntu machine, looking at your screen, it does have the same color scheme as the CentOS machine. So that kind of told me that you were sudoed it or you're SSH'd into the other box. Yep, you are. And that's fine. So you typed exit the first time to get out of root. Type it one more time for me. There you go. So now you noticed your prompt changed. It went from green to grayish color. What that did
Yeah.
is it exited you out of the Ubuntu machine and back into the CentOS machine.
Oh, so I wasn't in there. Okay.
Yeah, if you remember a few minutes ago when we SSH'd into the 192.168.1.3
Mm-hmm.
system, you were still logged into there. I didn't mention closing that out, so
Oh, okay.
that's on me. I should have said exit out of that machine.
Okay. Gotcha. Thank
Yep.
you.
Yep. So since we are all still in our, so now, Miss Thornton, you're gonna have to go through and create that user.
Okay.
Give it a try, and I'll pause for a second while you do that, so you can catch up. And this isn't required to take a screenshot of, but if someone is catching up, I'm gonna put this in chat just so you have it. All right, let's go ahead and go to the top up here.
I'm sorry, I have one more question. For the password part, am I gonna do password one or the student ID?
Password 1 with a capital
Okay.
P. Mhm.
All right.
Make sure after you do the password that you do the user group portion as well. So once all of that's created, we're going to go to the CIS user and we're going to switch that user account. So switch user. And now you should see your username. It's password 1. Once you log in, it's going to ask you to authenticate your account, to choose a couple of options for setup. Sure, it's English, standard US keyboard. I would not allow location services. It's up to you. It is a virtual machine. And we're not going to use any of our online accounts. So we'll say skip and start using CentOS. And then once the get started populates, you can close that. And I'll pause here for a second. Let me know when you're up at this point. We'll continue. Just give me a thumbs up. All right, so let's go up to activities and down to terminal. Just because mine is a little bit smaller than everyone else's, I'm going to change my viewing window. I'm going to zoom in just a little bit if I can. Still
If you
reset.
undock it and then maximize that, it'll make the whole screen your computer.
Yeah, I was gonna do that, but I can actually. If I do that, do you still see it? I assume not.
No.
Yep, I assume not. So let me reshare. Is that better?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, and then I'll also change this too. Files are fine. Shortcuts, profiles fine. Custom. Is that a little bit better? All right, so
Oh,
now
yeah.
we
It's easy to see.
now we want to run Ansible version. So Ansible is that automation tool that we were talking about earlier in the session that we're going to start using in order to automate some of our tasks. So Ansible dash dash version will tell you what modules and what configurations are already set up. So this one is using Python version 3.12.1. It's using the GNU compiler 8.5.0, and it's running Red Hat 8.5.0-4 for Python 3. It gives you the Python Ansible or Ansible Python module location and the configured search module location if needed. You don't necessarily need all that information. What you need is where is Ansible located and how does it work exactly. So I'm going to take a screenshot of this, because this is where your next screenshot should be. And then we're going to make some folders or some directories and some files, or specifically some directories and then a file. Our first directory is going to be etc, or it's going to be under the etc directory under Ansible. And so we're going to do sudo make dir, and it's etc Ansible. And that's going to be password 1. Once that's created, we can do a sudo touch etc Ansible hosts. Now, I mentioned earlier that the host direct or the host file is not to be confused with the hosts file that lives under the etc directory. This is a host file specifically for Ansible and the host or the targets that you're going to be using. So we're going to touch that file. And then we're going to do an ls of Ansible to see that that file does exist. All right, so my next question before we dive a little deeper is, how many of you are familiar with VI? Or Vim, Visual Editor? How many of you are familiar with Nano?
A little. I took a class doing it.
Okay. So the reason I asked that question is, if you're more familiar with Nano, I will switch it and use Nano. I prefer using VI, but it's much easier if people understand Nano and how it works. So then we'll use that. All right, my next question is, how many of you have used VS Code before? Anybody use VS Code?
Not familiar with that one.
Me either.
Okay, no worries. All right, so let's do this then. So I'm going to do sudo root to get into root. So sudo space su space dash root. I'll type that in chat. It's no different than doing su space root or su dash root. It's the same command. The difference is I use sudo to not have to type in my password, or to type in the password for the root account. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to do sudo, actually we're in his root, we don't need sudo, rpm import https, and I'll put this in chat as well, packages.microsoft.com keys microsoft.asc. I'll paste this in chat when I'm typing. So that one first. And then the next one is echo. So we're going to do code followed by name. Actually, yum repo, sorry. VS code dot repo. And you all had already said you're familiar with Nano, so I should have done that first. So Nano. So if you're in as root, do c yum dot repos dot d. It's VS code dot repo. And we're going to say code name equals Visual Studio Code base URL is packages.microsoft. This is going to be important in just a few minutes, I promise. Yum repos VS Code enabled is equal to 1. We're going to do PGP check is turned on. And the PGP, I'm sorry, GPG key, sorry, is going to be HTTPS packages.microsoft.com keys microsoft.asc. I'm typing it out so you can see it. That's what it should look like. And so I will save it. Is that where you were stuck, Miss Thornton?
Yes, I'm gonna try it again right now.
Oh, you're good. I'll pause here. And if you're curious, this is the URL I'm using.
So my import read said that it failed. What does that mean that I did wrong? What did I do wrong?
I'm gonna have to log in, so give me a sec.
Okay. Thank you.
When I do that, it's gonna kick me out of here, so let's see what it does. It should kick me out. It didn't. Ah, you fixed it.
I did, but then I literally forgot how you got into Nano.
You don't. So it's this next one.
Okay, history. Oh,
No, you don't. You don't have to do history. You just do Nano.
okay.
That right there. And it looks like that. Actually, here. Let me. That's what it looks like. Make sure it's single quotes instead of the brackets. And the reason I'm spending so much time on this part is it's kind of important to show you an IDE or integrated development environment instead of using VI or Nano or Emacs or Pico or whichever other visual editor you choose to use. Using Visual Studio Code is going to be a little bit easier. At least I hope it's easier for you to see once we get into it.
I'm trying to do I guess the nano, and I'm getting that error. To when I try to save it.
All right, let me. Which one was it? You're in your CentOS machine, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know. I just wrote everything on there and I just tried to save it, and it just says error writing. etc repos.d/vs code.
So do this then. Do a Control X. Okay. And a Y. Where you got the yum /, change that to a period. So where you're at currently, there you go. There you go. And hit enter. And Y. There you go.
Huh. Okay.
So it actually saved it to that directory. So if we go here, sorry, I can actually, it's there.
Okay.
All you did was you started the file in one way and then you saved it in another one. It's no big deal.
Okay. All right.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep.
And
Now,
after we complete this typing in Nano, do we do Control S and then exit out?
yep.
Okay.
Control S, Control X.
Okay.
All right. Now that you've done that portion, you're still in as root. So we're going to do a yum update. And you should see VS Code or Visual Studio Code at the top there as one of your modules. And we'll do yum install code. It's going to ask if you want to install it. We're going to say yes. I promise you this will be important. And let me know when yours is installed. All right, so go ahead and type exit for me. And make sure that you're in your user account now. You can do who am I if you want to see who the user you are. If you're still in as root, you can type exit and hit enter. And you can do who am I again to see your user account. Now that you're in your user account, we can type in code, or if you don't want to do it that way, you can actually go to activities, show applications, and you have VS Code right there. You can right click and say add to favorites. It's up to you. There's multiple ways to get to it. If you were in your terminal and you typed in code, it's going to launch Visual Studio Code just as if you were to have clicked it yourself. So that will launch Visual Studio Code. First thing it's going to ask is, do you want to run Copilot? Say no, because we don't have a Copilot license. The second one asks your theme. It's totally up to you how you want your theme to be. Some people choose a light modern background. Some people choose a dark modern background. And there's others out there. I'll tell you, for me, I code in VS Code all day, every day. My eyes tend to get burnt out over time. So I tend to use more of a dark modern. It asks you for the support model you want to use. For us, we're going to choose browse languages. And we're going to wait for a second. And we're going to choose Python. So we're going to say Python and say install. Let that install. We're also going to just type in ansible. And we're going to add ansible in here as well. It's going to ask you to, for help, you can say accept if you'd like. At the end of this, you should have Ansible and Python installed with the other secondary pieces. Don't worry about what's in the middle here. We're not going to worry about that at the moment. Under tune your settings, we're just going to leave that alone. And we're going to mark everything as done. And we'll close. So you should have Ansible and Python installed. Is everyone with me so far?
Yes.
Okay. Instead of having to navigate through your host files and your home directory to get to your playbooks, Visual Studio Code makes it easier to do that. So what you will see is you'll probably see me do it multiple ways, because I don't just want to show you the Visual Studio side. I want to show you the terminal or the command line side as well. So what you'll see is under the terminal side, I'll click on terminal, new terminal. That's going to open up a terminal session, just like I would be in at the command line level. I can do it. Who am I? I can do a ES rep for my user. You can do anything just like you were using it for the command line level at the terminal level. Difference is it's just integrated in your IDE, or in IDE again stands for integrated development environment. I can have more than one bash session running. So if I'm running something and I want to flip over to another one, I have that ability to switch over and use multiples. So it makes life a little bit easier when you're working with multiple environments or working with multiple tasks. All right. We can say open folder, which is our next piece. We're going to say open folder. And we're going to choose other locations, computer, etc. And there should be an Ansible directory. So etc Ansible. Once that's found, you can say open. I'm going to do that again so you'll see me. So open folder, other locations, computer, go to etc. We'll search by the top, go to Ansible, and we'll choose open. And what that does is it opens our Ansible directory. Since it is under etc, it's considered a secure file or a secure folder. So we need to be able to authorize that the parent of that directory has access, or we have access to that parent. So we'll say trust, and then yes, trust the authors. Now we have that host file sitting there. Well, let's go ahead and open that file by double clicking it. So now I can start typing as if I were doing something in that file. So instead of opening it in Nano or VI or Emacs or Pico or whatever visual editor you want to use, the IDE has it for us. It's just like using Microsoft Word or text editor, some sort of text editor. It's the same look and feel. The difference here is I have access to my terminal at the bottom. So I can not only see the file I'm working on, I can actually see where I'm at in my directory structure. So what we want to do to this file is we want to create our first target group. Our first target group is going to be test group, followed by 192.168.1.3. So we'll type all that in, and then we need to save this. Since we're in as our user account, we don't have access to save this file by default. So if you do a Control S, just like you would in any text editor, you can say retry as sudo. It's going to ask you to put in your password. And now you have saved that file. To verify you've saved the file, I'm in the etc directory and then inside of Ansible, I'll cat that file. at that file, and you'll see it's there.
How do I get that to come up at the bottom of my screen? Mine's is just all white. It didn't come up with that section.
You're good. So go up to terminal at the top
Uh-huh.
and click on new terminal.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, no worries. I can just as easily, instead of making my modifications here, I can modify it right here. And as I save that, you notice it made that change in my text editor. So it just makes it a little easier when you're working with files. It's more of a text editor than it is anything. Let me get that file back to normal. And it's here where we want to take our first screenshot. So we'll take a screenshot of that file, and I'll paste that in chat for you. Once we've taken that screenshot, we now need to set up SSH from our CentOS machine to our other machines. We do not, like I mentioned earlier, we do not want to have to continuously type in our password every single time, or we don't want to be prompted for the password every single time. So in order to do that, we can add an SSH key. The SSH key can be generated by running SSH keygen. And this is key generation. You'll hit enter. It's going to ask you if you want to create that file in the .ssh directory. We're going to say yes. So we're just going to hit enter. We're not going to add a passphrase. You can add a custom passphrase if you'd like later on, but for this example, we're not going to. It asks if you're sure. We're going to say yes. That's going to randomly generate some image. And that creates our first keygen. I'm going to pause there. I'm going to bring this up a little bit so you can see where I was. I'm going to pause there for a second while you generate that key. So once that's created, we want to test that we can connect. So let's do an SSH copy ID. We're going to copy that ID, so your username, into 192.168.1.3. What this is doing, the SSH copy ID command is taking that public key that was created in the .ssh directory, and it's sharing that across in the known host or authorized keys section of the intended target or the intended server. In our case, is Ubuntu. So we'll hit enter. It's going to ask us again if that is correct. We're going to say yes. And we're going to have to verify the password for the very last time. And if successful, you should have key number of keys added is 1. And so that adds those keys to your section. I'm going to take a screenshot here as well. And I'm going to pause because, Josh, you were having an issue. So I'm going to take a screenshot here. And Josh, if you don't mind, I'm going to log into your machine.
Sounds good.
I should have asked, is it Josh or Joshua?
Josh is fine.
Which one?
Yeah, Joshua's full name, but Josh is good. Most people call me Josh.
Okay. I didn't want to get it wrong. That's why I'm asking. All right. So you're in your CentOS machine. So you've gotten your nano portion done, correct?
Correct. I can bring it up real quick.
You can just do a catch. You don't have to nano it. Here, I'll show you. Like that. Okay, that looks good. So now do a yum update. What failed? Oh, you see where you've got code at the top there? Make that lowercase instead of uppercase in the brackets. There you go. And where did it say the issue is now? Couldn't resolve. Oh, I'll go back into it. It's packages.microsoft. And it's on both of those, yep. Should be good for the rest of that. All right, and then do yum upgrade. I'm sorry, yum install code -y. All right, when that finishes, you can exit out of root and type in code, and that'll pull it up for you. You can just type exit and code one more time. And code. There it goes. So from here, you can choose your theme if you want light or dark. Yeah, that's in the choose theme section. And then once you're done with that, Oh, I'm sorry. I'm in there, so it's messing with your view.
What in the world? Okay.
Did it work that time?
Looks like. All right.
And then you see the one with the blocks at the very bottom down there for extent. It's called extensions. It's right below the play and the bug, right there. Yep. So type in ansible, or actually before you do that, type. You see the in Python one at the top there. Yeah, click on that one. The install. And it's installing. And then go ahead in the search bar at the top. Type in ansible. There you go. And that's the first one. While those are installing, you can close those out. At the very top, the tabs, you can close those. There you go. And click on right at the very top where it has those two little windows right here. Sorry, I did it instead of.
No, you're good.
All right, click on the open folder for me. Yep. Other locations. At the very bottom, computer, etc, Ansible, and open. And you can say trust. And you can open the host file. And that's where you would do, yep. So in the host file, you would type in this right here. And make sure it's all one word. Save that. Oh. There it goes. All right, so now you can do SSH dash key. This keygen. You gotta type keygen first. Dash keygen. You can just continue on with the prompts. So hit enter. Yep. Oh, you don't put one there unless you did.
I did. All right. I'll just, yeah, it's the same as we've been inputting.
Okay.
All right.
All right, so go ahead and do your SSH copy ID. So now that you've gotten that one, I'll close out of yours. Miss Thornton, did you get yours up and running? The password?
No, I did password one multiple times. It keeps saying permission denied. Try again.
So in your SSH copy command, you've got CORTHO. You're missing the 7029 in your username.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, no worries. So now that we've got that, let's go ahead and give it a try. And you should not have to type your password in.
Key was added.
There you go. And you want to take a screenshot of that.
Okay.
And so once you do that, then you want to type that in again, or the SSH command, and get into your Ubuntu machine. There's another interesting little tidbit that I didn't mention. If the user account that you're in on one machine is the same as the user account on the target or the second machine, you do not necessarily have to type in the username. You can just do 1.3 and it assumes the same user. That's just a little quick trip. Instead of having to type out the rest of it, it's just SSH, this IP address.
Cool.
Now, for me, I work with so many user accounts and so many connections. I always have to remember which user account I'm in, so I always have to put the user ID. But that's just a good way to look at it. If you have the same account in every environment, if that's your automation account, then you can definitely use that shortcut method.
Question.
Yep.
For those various user IDs on a mass quantity, do you get it from a ticketing system so you can input it, or how is that shared?
Which part? The user account?
The user ID, so you know which one to log into.
So yeah, okay, let me take that at a broad level. So and I'll use Ansible as the example. With Ansible, you can actually specify the user that you want to log in with in that host file. Instead of just that target group that we have at the top there, you can specify user information as well in variables. So you don't necessarily, and we're gonna do that later on, so you can store those off. There's other tool sets that we use. One is called Jenkins. I don't know if you've ever heard of that before. Jenkins is another a graphical automation tool set that you can use. And for that one specifically, we have a set of keys that I have set up. So I don't necessarily have to remember the user account that I'm logging in with. I have a key pair set up for every single user. So if I'm logging in with, just say, my S. McLean user, I will log into it, but there's always an automation user on each box that once I'm in there, it has either will or sudo, so I can go into whichever account I need. So I use that as my jump point, and then I use automation to get to the other points. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Thanks for the clarification.
Yep. Now, before we started using Jenkins, we did have to share keys, and yeah, we were using Jira as our ticketing system, and we'd have to go in there, or we actually had LastPass. We would go look at LastPass to see which account we wanted to log in with, and that's where we get the credentials from. And that got tedious, so we ended up using Jenkins and Terraform to do a lot of our stuff, which ironically are two of the other tool sets that I was going to talk about, not tonight, but later on in the course. because they are two very prevalent tool sets in the industry. It's Jenkins and Terraform. All right, so now that we're in our CentOS machine, I'm going to hit clear to clear my screen. We want to test Ansible. I mean, we've looked at the version, but we haven't done anything with it just yet. So let's go ahead and do Ansible all-m ping. Now this is a little different than the standard ICMP ping that you would do, where it's a standard call response, or it hits the ICMP port and then comes back with a "I'm valid, here's my packets." This is different. This is actually a discoverable ping pong from Ansible. So it will send a request out to any and all hosts in our host folder or in our host file. So if I broke it down, Ansible is the binary we were using, or the actual command. All is the target that we want to use. If we say all, we want every target in this list. We could just as easily say test group, and it would do the same thing. The -m is a message. We want to send a message ping. By default, an Ansible ping understands that once it hits the calling agent or the calling server, a subsequent pong is sent back. So if I hit enter here, if we set it up correctly using SSH, we should get our pong. And I could do this and just do test group 1. And I'll save that. It's going to be the same one. That's perfectly fine. You can have the same one in there multiple times. If I do that all again, it's going to ping them all. It saw that both of those were the exact same. It reconciled the target to one attempt, and it responded back with 1. So I'll remove that just for readability purposes. All right, so now that we've done that, you want to take a screenshot of this to show that we were able to get a pong back from our environments. All right, and so that actually concludes the 1.6 guided practice. So let me back up for a second and kind of walk us through what we did. We configured our CentOS machine with our new user. We gave that user wheel privileges. We set up SSH keys. We validated that Ansible was installed. We actually added a second step to this, which was install Visual Studio Code, and configured that. That's not exactly in our guided practice, but it's going to benefit us later on once we're inside of our playbooks. And we start working with those. It makes it so much easier to navigate between files as opposed to doing it in the command line. And then we navigated over and ran a ping test, or an Ansible ping test. I got my words mixed up. Ansible ping test to our test group to ensure that it was in fact listening. Any questions on that? All right. So I will go ahead and clear that screen. Minimize, well, bring this down just a little bit. So in 1.7, which is our last guided practice for the evening, I know we've been going at it for a while. So does anyone want to take a 10-minute break?
I think that's fine.
So you guys want to
Yeah.
continue? Okay? Let's take a 10-minute break. Let's
Okay.
be yeah. Let's take a break and be back at 8:28. When we get back, we'll finish out 1.7, and then I'll explain sort of how I do the in-class activities and try and get you set up for your first performance assessment on Thursday or whenever you're ready to start it. Okay, so be back in about 10 minutes. All right, let's go ahead and continue on. So in the next guided practice, which is 1.7, we're going to be looking at running our first Ansible playbook. And if you remember, a playbook is nothing more than a collection of tasks. To put that into perspective, a task that we just ran was the Ansible ping. That was a task that could be performed. We're going to create several folders. In order to do that, and make sure I'm in my home directory. And if you're inside of your terminal at the bottom here, we're going to write out some things. The first, or we're going to create a directory called playbooks. So make directory playbooks. That's our first directory. So you'll notice we now have a directory called playbooks that we just created. And so in this example, in this particular guided practice, we're going to be installing Apache on our Ubuntu machine. Up to this point, Apache doesn't exist on that machine, so we're going to install it. Now that we've created that playbooks directory in our IDE or inside of Visual Studio Code, we can actually go over here in our folder window and right click. And we can add a folder to our workspace. And so I'm going to click on that. And under my home directory, I'm going to choose playbooks. I'm going to say add. It's going to ask if I want to trust everything in this folder. I'm going to say yes. And now you'll see we have our Ansible folder and we have our playbooks folder. This makes it a little easier when we're working with our playbooks. So for week 1, I'm just going to do a right click. You don't have to really do a right click. You can actually select it and go up here to folder. I can do this one of two ways. I can either create the folder here, or I can go down to my terminal window and go into my playbooks. And I can do a make directory, week 1. Really up to you, however you want to do it. I want to make multiples, so I want to make more than one folder. So instead of doing it through the IDE the one way, I'm going to create multiple at one time. So I'll do make directory, week, open bracket, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and hit enter. Oh, I mistyped it. My bad. It's curly brace, sorry, instead of a bracket. Bracket's an array. So by doing a curly brace, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, ending curly brace, that is actually an iterative array that allows you to do a make directory for the word week, and then it appends a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to each one of those commands. So it's a way to quickly build out more than one directory structure. And you can make that even deeper. I could have gone deeper with that directory structure. I just chose not to, and I chose to use that playbook or that week as my directory. So inside of my weeks now, I can right click and say new file. We're going to call this apache.yml or YAML, yet another markup language, YAML. So if you're in your playbooks directory, right? So to go back to that, you can type in make dir space week followed by open curly brace 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 with commas, ending curly brace, and that will create the directories 1 through 5 with week in front of it. Did that answer your question, Ms. Thornton?
No, I'm sorry. I think I need a redo. After I typed in the CD, that's where I got lost after that.
Okay, no, you're good. Let me, Daniel, I see you. Give me 1 second. Do you mind if I log into yours?
No, I don't mind.
Okay. And it's taking a minute, but I'm getting there. All right, so under playbook, okay, you're in playbooks. So type in under there, mkdir space week, open curly brace, 1 through 5. Yep. Close curly brace. Yep. Enter. And so that creates those in that directory. So if you do an ls right there, you'll see all of them. Yep. Now on the left-hand side, under where it says hosts, so click anywhere below hosts on that left-hand side. And it says add folder to workspace. Is it having an issue? Try it again. Oh, nope. Let's do this. So right click and it's add folder to workspace. And so now you'll choose the home directory at the top there and playbooks and hit add. And yes. There you go. So now you have your playbooks directory.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. I'll close out of that. That way I'm not moving your mouse around for you. Daniel, you had a question too?
Yeah, I think I'm lost. I see you using the Visual Studio Code. I think I have missed that part. I'm gonna have to just go back and watch the video once you
No,
upload.
you're fine. So I uploaded the URL for that one a little while ago. I'll paste that again just so you'll have it. I'll send it to you directly.
And then do I install it through the virtual machine or could just do it?
Yeah, you would need to do it in the CentOS machine.
Okay.
Yep. But so if you're curious, we did go through that. It is recorded. If you run into an issue when you're doing it, just let me know.
All right. Thanks.
Yep. All right. So now that we've got those created, I'm gonna go into here. I right clicked on week 1 and hit add new file. And I created a file called apache.yaml. So the reason I did that is we're going to now start to build out our first YAML file or declarative statement playbook that we can use. So we're going to say dash dash dash. So you always start your YAML file with 3 dashes, which tells it that you're starting your file. This is how you're going to enter. We'll then start with our hosts. Become true, and I'll explain this as we go through it. Install Apache 2. So the way Ansible works is it runs off of binary files. So it uses the binaries or the executables that are on the host machine. So as an example, we're logging into a machine that is Ubuntu. For us, on the Ubuntu machine, it's not it to install Apache, it's called Apache 2. To install it on Ubuntu, it is using the aptitude or apt framework. If you were doing this on a CentOS machine or a Red Hat machine or a Fedora machine, something that is RPM based, then it would be actual RPM colon name equals, and instead of Apache 2, it would actually be HTTPD. Little different, but it would just be a different story. And the reason for that is the way the binaries are built, they're different from Apache to they're different from Red Hat to Ubuntu or Debian versus Red Hat versioning style. We want to update cache, so we'll say yes, and the state that we want to choose is latest. Now, we could just as easily not choose latest. We could tell it the version of Apache that we wanted to install. If we had an issue where we needed to install a certain version. As an example, where I currently work, we have a need to only install Apache 8. We cannot go up to any higher because of one of our prerequisites. That's a little older, but we know that. Therefore, in all of our installation scripts, we state that the state that we're going to install is that version and only that version. What you'll also notice, and Andres, give me 1 second, I see you. What you'll notice is at line 2, we have our hosts colon all. If we wanted to specify any file or anything in our hosts file, we could do that. If you say all, you're actually specifying every host in your host directory or in your host file. The become keyword, that's actually important because it's telling the Ansible engine that you want to sudo to that account. You want to run this as a sudoed or a privileged user. And then 4 is your task set, anything that you want to run. You can have separate names, separate tasks that you want to set up and run. Andres, you had a question?
Yeah, I mean, I have all that written up. For some reason, I just completely missed how you did the weeks in there, and
Oh,
it's
this
not
here,
listed on the it's not on the actual um
like that.
instructions.
No, and you're absolutely right. I did this so that we can keep them all separate. As we're going through our guided practices, they're all going to be in this directory structure. I didn't want us to overlap what we're doing, so I set them up into weeks. So if you're in playbooks directory or folder, you can do make dir space week, open curly brace, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, close curly brace, and that will build out your structure. Let me know if you have an issue.
Yeah, it's there. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, I was just checking on something. All right, so now that we've gotten that installed, so we can, under here, we can either right click and say run the playbook via Ansible playbook, or we can test it using our testing engine. The way you do that is under our Explorer window, you can actually go to our weeks, and let's just say I'm up a directory somewhere else. I can right click on that weeks, copy that path, go down here to our terminal and do CD and then right click and paste. And that will put me into the directory I need to be in. Before we run our first Ansible playbook, we want to run a syntax check on it. There's one thing to keep in mind with declarative manifests or YAML files is they are very sensitive in terms of spacing. If you have something out of place, such as this task, if it's over one too many, you'll see those squiggly lines. That's basically saying that this file is invalid and needs to be corrected. And if I hover over it, it should say the keys need to be on a single line. Not very informative, but you should be able to see where the changes needs to be made. That is important when working in an IDE like Visual Studio Code, which is why I show that to you, because if you're working in Nano or VI, you don't get that instant feedback that you would with an IDE. And if this were 5 years ago, or even 7 or 10 years ago, I probably would have never shown you Visual Studio Code. Mainly because it would have been Visual Studio Edition, or it would have been Notepad++ or some other text editor. But I would not have shown it to you because I would have wanted you to use the command line. I would have wanted you to look at it on the actual editor itself. In today's modern landscape, in terms of development operations or engine or software engineering, you need to be able to use an IDE or to use a tool set. And this tool set is a good one to get started with. So once you're in there and you have your syntax checked, we're going to hit enter. And you should be able to see it come back. If it comes back with playbook : and the name of the playbook, that's a successful test or a successful check. So after we do that, we want to run it. So let's go ahead and say Ansible ask become pass. So what does this actually do? This particular command set will run your Ansible playbook, the one that we have currently right here. And the ask become pass is a way to force your user or the user that's running this instance to sudo into that account to run it as a privileged account user. And I'm going to pause right here before I keep going. Ms. Thornton, would you like for me to log in and take a look?
Yes, please.
Okay. And Josh, give me 1 second. If you're at that stage where I'm at here, you can actually hit enter. And the become password is just password 1. And you can watch it do the CentOS installation. You needed to save it. You see that little dot right there?
No, I don't. Could you point to it again?
Right there.
Oh, okay.
That means it needs to be saved.
Okay, just Control S and.
Yep. Control S. Yep.
Okay.
That may be the same thing for me. 1 second.
Is that right? What came up on mine?
Did it come back with the playbook in the
Yeah.
name?
No,
Yep.
I think it. No, it didn't. It says an error.
All right, hold on 1 second. I'll take a look.
Okay.
I just popped into Josh's.
Okay.
Oh. And make
So are you going over 1.6?
we've already gone through 1.6.
Okay, so you're on 1.7 now?
Yep. Yeah, we are.
All right, cool beans.
Yep. So Josh, on your line number 6, I mistyped state. So change lastest to latest.
Nice.
Yeah, I mistyped it.
Hold on 1 second. Latest.
Yep, and save that. Do a Control S. And try running it again.
All right. What's going on?
Hold on.
Hosts.
Oh, go to your host file right here
Yeah.
and save that. It looks like it needs to be saved.
Okay.
And retry as sudo. All right, now give it a try and see what happens. Huh. All right, let's see. Give me 1 sec. Let me take a look.
Yeah.
Oh, that was not very informative. Give that a try. So I changed the task to tasks with an S.
All right. Let's try. There it goes.
Yeah, very informative. Sorry.
It's all good. Yeah.
All Right, and so
Yeah,
then you'll switch the syntax dash check to ask dash become dash pass. I'll scroll up to the top where you can see it on my
Yeah.
side.
Same thing, Apache dot.
Yep,
Yep, that's
right.
it. All right,
Yep.
cool.
Oh, there we go. I'm logging into yours. Sorry. Um,
Solid.
oh, so it worked.
Mm-hmm.
I'm actually having issues with mine. I don't understand what happened, but now my host has an exclamation point on it.
All right, give me 1 sec. Miss Thornton, you see the line I have highlighted?
Yes.
So remove the spaces in between those dashes for me.
Okay.
Save that and give it one more try.
Okay.
I'm also having a little trouble. If you can give me some assistance when you get a chance.
Yep, I can. Let me look at Mr. Cruz's and now I'll look at yours. And then, Miss Thornton, now that you're there, you can do the next step, which is what I have highlighted on my screen here.
Thank you.
Yep. Andres, let me see. Mm. All right, so for yours, at line 6, make sure you have a space all the way where the name and the APT line up together. There you go. Save that. And give that a try. And also, real quick before you do that, you're going to need to be in the week 1 directory. So do a control C there inside of your terminal. And CD space week 1. Yep. And try it again.
No.
Unable to parse the host. I mean, it says it was good, but let's see your hosts. Oh,
Yeah, I think I didn't know exactly what happened there.
you're good.
That's what it was.
I'm just resetting it. You're good.
I was trying to go back real quick too, but then I didn't want to fall behind. Too
There
far
we go.
behind.
No, you're good. You're good. All right, so you're back to where you are now, or need to be. Close that file for you. Sorry. All right.
I'll try it again.
Yep. Go ahead and give it a try again to do the ask become pass portion that I have highlighted. And Stephen or Stefan?
It's Stefan.
Stefan. You said you were having an issue too, so let me log into yours.
Yeah, my issue is actually related to step 8. on page 9.
Okay. Page 9. You're already ahead of us.
Yes.
Yeah, you're doing the deploy website. Okay. So I'm guessing you had an issue around
It's saying
it wasn't the directory or the file wasn't there.
yeah, basically, yeah, it's saying it's no website or whatever.
Okay. We're actually about to that point now.
Okay, so I just
You're
stand
good.
by then.
Give me 1 second to let's make sure that actually worked for us. And so real quick, if everyone's on the screen and theirs shows this here, and there was no error messages on it, then it is a successful installation. And you need to now do a screenshot of that. I'll take a screenshot and put it in chat for you. Oh, wait, Stefan, you just ran it. I could have seen exactly what you were talking about. Sorry. Missing required arguments path. So open your deployments or your deploy.website or dash website. You got, oh, capital P at line 6. Try that. Save it and
Don't tell me that's all it was.
save it and give it a try.
But that's crazy.
You should just be able to do Control S to save it.
That's what I did.
Yep, it's there. There it went.
Okay.
Yep.
That's crazy. Thank you.
Yep. No worries. So since we're at this point here and we've gotten it installed, we now want to make sure that it's there. So I will, instead of logging into the Ubuntu machine, I'm just going to use our SSH connection, right? Because we've already got it, to go over there and check to make sure that it's been installed. And so I'll do system CTL status Apache 2. Let me clear that. And so it's system CTL status Apache 2, and it should say it started. So we'll take a screenshot of that to show that it started. And so next, we'll go and exit out of that machine and get back into our week 1 folder. So in our week 1 folder now, we want to create 2 new files. And this is where Stefan was a second ago. We're going to create 2 new files, one called index.html, and the other one is called, let's see, where is it at? It's deploy underscore website.yaml. So let's start off with week 1. So I'm going to right click, add new file called index.html. And I'm going to create a new file called deploy website.yaml. In the index.html file, go ahead and click on that. We're going to do a basic HTML website. And this is another reason why I like an IDE. I do not have to type everything back out. And save that. And once that is saved, go ahead and open your deployment or deploy underscore website.yaml. We're going to start that off. With tasks. This task is going to be called ensure the website is present and updated. Instead of using apt this time, we're going to check a file. So in order to check a file, we're going to use the file keyword. We give it the path. This is a standard path for Apache or HTTPD. It's var www.html. The state of this file is going to be a directory. I can type. The owner should be root. The group should be root. The mode should be 655. And the recursive should be yes. We're going to say become true. Minimize that just a little. We're going to do another template, or another task called deploy.
Hey, Professor.
Yes, sir.
In your path, the www.
Yep, I'm missing a W.
Yeah.
Thank you. We use templates. Our source is going to be the index file that we just created. Our destination is going to be index.html. And so as we're starting to type some of this, you're going to quickly figure out why I prefer the IDE over the command line. As you see me starting to type, it starts to fill out all that stuff for me. And I'll go ahead and tell you, if no one else has told you this before, developers in a nutshell are lazy. So if we can make something work for us, we're going to do it. And so for those who are going to watch the recording later on, yeah, the instructor did just say that developers are lazy, and he is one of them. All right, so what we've done here is we've created an index.html file, and a deploy website.yaml file. We've broken that deploy website.yaml file into 2 tasks. So at line 4 and line 13 are the 2 task sets that we're going to have. The first one is going to verify that directory is there, and the second one at line 13 is going to take the source of our index.html file and put it onto the website or onto that directory. Any questions on that so far? We'll do a syntax check. And if successful, we will run it. So I'll bring this up a little bit, clear that out, and then do a ask become pass. Password 1, let that run. If it was successful, pull this up a little bit so we can see the whole thing, because we're going to need to take a screenshot of this. And our final step, let's see if Firefox is installed. It is. So what I did, if you're curious, is inside of, close the tabs, inside of my IDE, after running my playbook, and it was successful, I typed in clear to clear out my screen. And then I typed in Firefox. And that loads Firefox for you. Once that's installed, or once that loads, I can navigate to 192.168.1.3. And if it was successful, your stuff should have changed. And so I'll take a screenshot of that as well. This is so you can see that it works. Once you see that that works, I'm going to make a change to my index and say new change. I'm going to rerun that. And you see the change. All right, so does anyone have any questions? I know we've covered a lot in the past 4 hours.
I have a question.
Okay.
I got behind when you went to the
Listen.
index part.
Yep.
And were you saying that it was like populating in the information for us so we wouldn't have to type?
I did. So as I was typing out this index file right here, if you type in just open bracket HTML, notice how it automatically starts. You don't have to continue to type everything. It just makes it a little easier.
Okay, I see.
And then that is part of it. The other part to it was, let me clear this out. In the deploy underscore website, as you are typing out that section, I'll minimize this so you can see it too. We filled out the owner, the mode, the become, all of that up here in the first task. As we started typing in the second task set, we didn't have to continue to type it out. As an example, I'll remove this one. I'll just do var, and it automatically shows up as var www.html. So I could just hit tab, and it would automatically fill that for me. And then I can just finish it out with index.html. It's just it makes it a little faster when you're typing. Did that make sense?
Yes, I'm working on it now.
Nope, you're good. So while you're doing that, this is the end of the guided practice for 1.7. We have we've installed Apache, we have configured Apache, and we have installed index.html on that Apache server. We've verified it. So that is our first implementation of Ansible. We have run 2 different playbooks. We've run a syntax check on both of those playbooks to see that it actually is successful. Does anyone have any questions so far on what we've kind of covered?
I may have one,
Okay,
but I think I might have just figured it out. So give me 2 seconds.
no worries.
Yeah, we're good.
Okay.
I was using localhost as opposed to the IP address. So
no worries. No worries. Yeah, so if you looked in the actual PDF, it shows both of them. I just bypassed going into Ubuntu because if you're using the IP address, you're going to hit it the same way. Any other questions? All right. So that kind of concludes what I wanted to cover for tonight. For Thursday, we've already gone through the guided practices. What is due by Sunday or by February the 2nd is all the guided practices, all the screenshots that we've had to do, all those are due. You'll also have your 1.3, which is the knowledge check, and a crossword puzzle for chapter 1 and 2. So 1.3 and 1.4, and 1.8. So 1.8 is the performance assessment. And the performance assessment had or should have a video attached to it to kind of walk you through. However, if you were to go into it really quick and take a look, what it wants you to do is on your Ubuntu machine, it wants you to create a user. On your CentOS machine, it wants you to create a user. On the Ubuntu machine, it wants you to configure SSHD, exactly like we did in our first example. It wants you to create a file called SSH success, just like we did with this is a file on the Ubuntu computer. Then on your CentOS machine, it wants you to connect to your Ubuntu machine and paste that you were able to see that file. And that's all you have to do. That's as far as it goes. Oh, I'm sorry, and install Ansible. Ansible should already be installed on that CentOS machine by default. So you would just do Ansible -- version, which is what we did in 1.6. And then you would set up your SSH key like we did in 1.6 and log in and run the ping like we did at the end of 1.6. So long story short, you can follow the blueprints for 1.5 and 1.6 to get you 99% there for your performance assessment. If you have issues or questions or anything around the performance assessment, I can log in and take a look and give you guidance on what to do. And it is your first performance assessment for this class. So I'm not going to ding you too much if there's anything out of place. I'm going to help walk you through it. That way you get the full points for the first week. I'm not going to throw it out and just expect you to walk through it. I want to make sure that you understand the syntax that we're working with, how you log into VS Code if you wanted to install it, and how you worked with installing Ansible or configuring it. So don't worry if you have issues. We can work through those. All right, any questions?
I have a question. After I typed in my my syntax or my code in the deploy website part,
Mm-hmm.
and I tried to type in the Ansible playbook, and it says that it's not found.
All right, I'm gonna log into it if you don't mind.
Okay.
I'm gonna stop sharing this screen. That way it and I'll share. If you don't mind, I'll share yours. That way it's seeing it.
Okay.
So let's exit out of here. Now give it a try. You were still logged into the Ubuntu machine. That's the Apache one. You'll want to switch out apache.yaml for deploy_website.
Okay. Is that in the guided practice? I'm kind of lost.
Yeah, so it is. And the guided practice on page 8 at the very bottom. Line number 7. Check the syntax type. Right there.
Okay. All right. Let me see.
Yep. So let's do one or two things for me real quick. So may I click in here?
Be quiet, baby. Keep it to yourself.
Yes.
So at line, all right, so you're going to have an issue at line 6 all the way to line 11. It's not exactly spaced the way it needs to be. So path, state, owner, group, mode, and recurse need to actually be aligned with the L for file. There. And then for owner, you need to have a space after the colon, and for group and mode. You need to have a space after the colon for the name at line 13 as well, and for 4. I'm sorry, I saw that one late. At line 4 as well. And then come all the way down to the bottom. And so line 20, instead of the word become, you put an O instead of a P. Save that. And then do me one more favor. Right click on the file name over there on the left hand side. And go to the little arrow at the bottom there. Rename. So switch the T and the I in website. And then put a period instead of a comma. There you go. Yep, that's right. And then, yep. And then do ask dash become. All right. So that's been installed. So, yep, you can take a screenshot of that. And then after the screenshot, you can type in Firefox in your browser window there. There you go. And at the top, you can type in the 192.168.1.3. All right, so it says it was there, but it doesn't have anything saved. So can you close that for me? That whole Firefox. And open up your index.html for me. Yep, and come down, yep, you got it. So at line 3, where your first open or less than symbol is, do H1 close.
Say that one more time.
Yeah, at line 3, where you've got the less than symbol, and you got CO, your first name, put H1 close or a greater than. Basically, open the tag instead of closing it. Yep. And close it. Tab. So hold on. Yep. And then remove the open and then the forward slash. And now remove the forward slash. There you go. Save that. And then rerun your playbook.
Same thing on the end, and also HTML has the forward slash.
Yeah, you're right. Well, you need the forward slash on 4, but there you go. Enter.
Oh my goodness.
No, you're
Hold on.
fine. You're fine. You're fine. What's wrong is you've got everyone watching you, so don't worry about
Yeah,
it.
like
Don't worry about it.
okay.
So hit the.
I'm gonna just delete 5 real quick.
There you go.
Okay.
You're absolutely fine. Now close that tag.
Okay. Let's see.
Yep, and hit enter.
Mm-hmm.
And if you hit the open tag again,
Uh-huh.
tab. There you go. Now save it.
Okay.
Yep.
And
And then so what you can do now, because all that looks good, is rerun your playbook and then look at Firefox and it should be correct. What happened is it tried to load that index.html and the syntax was wrong or was kind of malformed and it didn't know how to use it. So if you rerun your playbook, it'll put the new file out there. I wouldn't do it that way.
okay. How do I rerun my playbook?
So go back down to your terminal down there.
And type Firefox again?
Well, not yet. So hit the up arrow twice. Right there.
Oh, okay.
All right, so now, okay, before you hit enter, hit space, and then type in your IP address. Yep, this is going to fill that out in the URL bar.
Okay.
It's a little faster shortcut. Hit enter. There you go.
Thank you so much.
Yep. And good job because you had everyone watching you.
I know, right? Thank you for being so helpful, though. I appreciate it.
No worries. So I've said at the beginning and even throughout all of it, if anybody has any issues or questions, if I'm going too fast, stop me. Because the ultimate goal is to have everyone caught up. All right, so I'll go ahead and stop sharing. All right. So we have covered all the guided practices. I've talked a little bit around the performance assessment. The one thing I have not mentioned is the in-class activity. The way I do my in-class activities is so some of you have had me before, so you know what's coming. The way I do my in-class activities is if you are here on the first class, so the Tuesday and the Thursday, or at least if you have touched base with me on Thursday, then you'll get full credit for the in-class activity. And the reason for that is in the in-class activity that we do, I try to incorporate those in our guided practices and as I'm talking. So if you go look at the in-class activity, you'll notice that as I was talking, I threw in some of those questions just to get feedback and information. That was to help me understand as I was talking where you all might have been and where you were at in the lecture. So I treat in-class activity as more of an attendance style grade. By some chance, if you can't make it to a Tuesday or Thursday, don't worry about it if you don't get all the points for the in-class activity. You can still submit the questions in the in-class activity and I'll grade those just as if you were here. So don't think that just because you weren't here, you won't get full credit. You can still turn something in. Any questions?
No,
Sounds
good to
good to
go.
me.
Understood.
All right, so we've been going for quite a while. I know it's 9:30, and I do thank everyone for staying with me. We got through everything that I wanted to cover. So for Thursday, if you have already started your assessment, or if you have finished your assessment and you want to work independently, you're more than welcome to do so. Just please check in with me first so that I can count attendance. I need to make sure that you are at least engaged on that day and I can mark as attendance. However, if you want to come and join in, I'm going to be here for a while on Thursday. So if you have issues or questions or want to talk through anything, it's your time. All right.
Yes, sir.
Well, I will give you all a little bit of time back. I'm going to stop the recording. Once it's finished rendering, I'll put it on the home screen of the class. That way you can get to it, and I'll upload it to probably YouTube or something here shortly, so you'll be able to see it. All right. Well, I will let you all have a good evening, and I'll see and talk to you on Thursday.
Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.